Hello there. I am so glad you're here tonight because this is going to be such a fun show. I am really excited about it. Before we get started, I hope everyone had a really fantastic 4th of July, and I hope that you got to see some fireworks, be with people that you knew and loved, maybe have something really good that was, coming off a grill, and mainly just were able to celebrate and have love for our country. It's so much fun to live here, and it's so much better than a lot of other places. I'm not going to lie. But thanks for being here. I am really excited because I have a guest that I have followed for a long time. I don't think that we've ever had a chance to do a show, but we have met in passing here or there, but only once or twice. And it was truly in passing. But it's Melissa St. Hilaire. She is a really great psychic reader. She and this is something we're going to talk about too, because she began reading tarot when she was 12. And I've only had one person read tarot for me, and she wigged me out. So, because she was very mystical hands and everything. And I was just kind of like, I'm not that girl, but you're hitting everything, but you're wigging me out. So I'm really interested in Melissa because she's a intuitive reader, a medium at the Green Man in North Hollywood, California. She does spell crafting, psychic development series. She does mediumship training. And something I didn't know is that she does Victorian table tipping seances. And I find that fascinating because why not? I think it's cool. But I find everything she does fascinating. She's written articles for Fem Power Circle, Savvy Authors, SF Signal, and the Quillery, and I love the Quillery. Um, she just she does everything. She's published 4 books, and she's got her 5th coming out, and that is 30 Real Signs of the Afterlife. And I'm going to let her tell us about her web series and stuff because I think she's fascinating, and I know you want to listen to her more than you want to listen to me. So let's bring her. So, hi, Melissa.
Kat, hello again. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being had. Seriously, I'm just really, like I said, I followed you for a long time. We have a lot of mutual friends. I'm familiar with your work. And
Yes.
it's just so fun to be able to talk to you. And hello, Robert and chat. It's so good to see you. But
Yeah.
you know, you've been doing this as a child. You started.
Yeah.
And when how did that actually happen? How did you come to know that this was what that was and what you were doing?
Well, I didn't really know what was going on, honestly, as a child. So I was about 3 years old when I saw my first spirit. I saw a lot of spirits.
Okay, yeah.
And I didn't really, and I was also about 5, I want to say, when I had my first premonition of the future. So, I've always sort of had these abilities, but I didn't realize they were abilities. I just assumed
Right.
everybody could see spirits, and then everybody had dreams about the future, and everybody could kind of hear what people were thinking. I just thought that was part of being human.
Yeah.
you know so for a long time I didn't really realize that what I could do was that different until I started to go into school and be
Right.
socialized, things like that. And then I learned very quickly that I knew things about people that I shouldn't know. And I would get into trouble a lot because of that. I would get, teased and bullied and picked on and all kinds of stuff. And it was just because I would get so much information in my brain that I didn't know what someone told me versus something that I could just
Right.
know. You know what I mean? And it took me a long time to realize I was different because I have different family members who have the same abilities. So in my family, I'm just normal, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, when I got out into the world, I realized, okay, so not everybody can kind of hear people's thoughts. And not everybody can see spirits. But then another thing that I sort of realized over time was that I now kind of come to a place where I do feel like everyone is capable of this,
Yes.
because I feel like I just somehow, I think that I just didn't get a filter, you know? I think that, and I've done so much studying now, and a lot of people, when you study this stuff, they talk about how our subconscious actually picks up all of this information. Our subconscious picks up spirits, picks up other people's energies, picks up everything. But it only filters through to our conscious that which is most important for survival. And because, we don't live on the land so much anymore, we don't
Yeah.
we don't have to be as hyper vigilant of energies around us, but if we were out living in the forest, we could know if there was a bear a half a mile away or something. You know what I mean? Like you can feel things. And so I think I've always kind of just had this. But little moments throughout my life, I had these moments where other people would sort of validate my experiences. So when I was 3 and I saw my grandpa's ghost, my grandpa was able to validate that for me. Um, when I was about 5 or so, I had this premonition dream, and it was kind of a dumb dream because I was a child, but I dreamt there was like a big bug in my little sippy cup, you know what I mean? And so I would torture my mother for like, I don't months, maybe even years with like trying to
Oh,
figure.
wow.
Yeah, because I was constantly worried this bug would be in my cup. And finally my mom was like, enough with the bug in the cup. Like, there is no bug in no cup. It was just a bad dream. It's not real. It's never going to happen. You got to get over it. And then we were at Pub 99, which, if you know New England at all, there used to be this like place called Pub 99. I don't even know if it still exists, um, but it was like this family kind of restaurant thing, and they always had popcorn on the floor. Anyway, they bring out the cups, and the cups that they had were exactly what the one was in my dream that had the
Oh,
bug.
no.
I know. So I was like, oh no. And my mom is like, no, it's going to be fine. Just drink it. It's fine. But in my little kid brain, I knew I had a vision. I didn't really understand it was a vision. I didn't know it was prophecy or premonition. But I took my cup and I examined it very carefully, like the straw and like swishing it
Not
around.
getting a bug in my mouth. Yep.
Exactly. I was like, I'm going to make
Yeah.
sure. And I swished the thing around. And what did you know? As it comes around, boom, right in front of me, and stuck in an ice cube, giant
Oh,
cockroach.
my
And
gosh.
when you're a 5-year-old, a cockroach is massive, you know?
Yes. They're massive when you're 60 also.
Yes, I know. So I screamed, I freaked out, and everyone was like, "Oh my God." And my mom was like, "That didn't happen. You didn't dream that. It's just a coincidence." And so, she was the one person, and like all growing up, who like, and this is kind of a weird dichotomy, because she would constantly kind of try to say, no, you're not hearing other people. You're not having premonitions. You don't know things. But in the next breath, she would be dragging me to psychics in Provincetown, Mass.
Gosh.
So, it was like she couldn't believe it for me, but she could believe it for like a stranger that she was paying, which was very strange. Um,
Yeah.
but because I would be a little kid, she'd go off and get readings, and you know how readings can take an hour long. So I would just be this kid hanging out in a psychic shop every summer, looking at stuff like, wow, this is
I want
cool.
that, and I want that, and I want that.
Like, carrot, because I didn't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
And my mom ended up getting me, she finally got me a deck when I was 12. I think she started to realize, like, oh, this is not just something that I do. Like, my kid's getting into this now too. And, she would take me to Salem, and I would go crazy in the shops, and I'd
Oh
get
my gosh.
yeah, and I'd
How
get weird
fun.
feelings there. We'd be walking down alleyways and stuff, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't walk down this alleyway. There's a weird feeling. Um, but yeah, so I was 12 when I got my first deck. I got a book also on witchcraft around that same age. And I also got a book on ghost hunting that same age. All of the things that I was interested in started around the same time. And I started giving tarot card readings for people. Now, granted, I'm still learning. I had the Mythic Tarot, which was based on Greek mythology. I would have my little book, and I would start reading cards for people. And as I would go through and like I would read the textbook definition that was in the little manual. But as I would look at the card, I would start to see other things, and I would start to get things in my head, pictures, words, music, all kinds of smells even. And so I would share those things, and those things tended to be the things that people would relate to the most. They might listen to the card and be like, "Oh yeah." But then when I would start saying, "Oh, I'm also seeing a woman in a pink dress with glasses, and she's saying, eat up," and oh, that was my grandma. You know what I mean? Like, it would
Sure.
be these weird things would happen, and I thought it was the cards. I didn't know it was me. I thought somehow the cards had special power, and it took me a long time to realize, like, no, they're just cards. It's
Yeah.
you. It's the person that has the power.
Well, and people get that confused sometimes, and I know people that are like afraid of tarot cards.
Right.
And I find that tragic, really, because they're an art form, they're so beautiful.
Yes.
And I was at a conference in Eureka Springs, Arkansas that I had met this woman at, and everybody's planes got canceled trying to go home. Bentonville was just like a nightmare. So my plane was delayed probably till the next morning at this point. She lived in Missouri, so she was driving. And so she was like, "You want me to do a reading for you?" And I'm like, "What kind of reading for me?" So I'm really protective of my energy.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Well, just tarot." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds good." So she was a devotee of Crowley, right?
Oh, yes.
So she's doing all my stuff and she's doing everything. And she puts on a little turban, right? And we're sitting there. And bear in mind, I had just met her. So the turban kind of threw me a bit for a loop. And so I started shielding because
Oh
I
no.
didn't know who she was. And so it was really funny because she's going through and she's going through and she's pretty spot on, right? She's doing a good job. And I'm meanwhile like, because I don't feed, I'm like, I know that name, or I know that, or this, and because I don't want to take something if there's a message truly coming through for me. I want it to be natural. And
Right.
so we got through. She was pretty spot on. She was really, really spot on. So we got through, and she did this really complicated thing with her hands and stuff all over her head. And I was just like, I had gotten all relaxed and stuff. And then that happened over the turban.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like, I'll bet my plane's probably about ready to go now.
Time
And I did not know what to do. And because I was at a UFO conference, right?
to
So that's where my focus had been. I was not thinking anything really paranormal. And
right.
then this experience was happening. And I was just kind of like,
Like, whoa.
I think I'm good now. Thank you so much.
I wonder
And
what she was doing with her hands, because I'm not
it's like
familiar.
inverting, like doing a whole inversion thing. It's a Crowley thing.
Oh, it's the Crowley thing.
And
Yes, see, I don't know much about.
really,
I've read. I'm reading a book on Thelema now, and I don't know much about. Like, I never really took a deep dive on
right.
Crowley, because it was so funny because like when you start to tiptoe into these worlds, there are these famous people that you stumble upon, and I feel like every single character I've stumbled upon has been controversial for some reason or another. Either they were misogynistic or they used the horrible language, or you know what I mean? And it's like, gosh, like, and then I get torn because it's like, well, I kind of want to know what they did, but I don't want to get wrapped up in the negative.
Mhm. I do know, but well, because negativity, especially in that area, is so strong. And thank you, because I did not know his name was Crowley, not Crowley. I've never heard anyone say it, so
I
I
think
appreciate that you did.
I think a lot. I used to pronounce
I
it
mean,
Crowley, and then someone corrected me and said Crowley, and I was like, oh, is it? And so, but I don't think it really ultimately matters.
At this point, I don't think so. Um, it's really interesting because I every time I go to this UFO conference, I have the most interesting experiences because it's it's not just UFO. I'm sorry. I'm going to mute right for a second.
Oh, sure. Some sounds going on in the background there.
Well, apparently we have company.
Ah!
So we have had a catastrophic electrical thing happen in our house this weekend
Interesting.
or this week. And so, well, electricity is weird around me anyway. But in this instance, I opened my refrigerator doors and the light in the refrigerator was phasing, like
Weird.
phasing. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, I can't move it, right, to get around to the back. And I'm just like, oh dear. Oh dear. So David comes home and we empty it and we move it. And the the water line for the ice machine was touching the plug, the outlet. And so I just figured
Oh,
that's what it was, right? But
interesting.
it looked like, back in high school when you're at the skating rink with the disco balls going and everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I'm thinking, Ghostbusters. All right.
Oh, well, that was my first look. I was like, there is no Dana. There is only Zool. I'm like,
so I was looking for Zool.
Yeah.
So, we have got so many questions here for you. And Randy Ortega, I just met today. So we're going to be getting to have some more conversations. But he said we're mentioning things related to he and his wife's, past. And Robert wants to know if you have ever met a stranger in real life that, in hindsight, might have been a non-human.
Oh, wow. That is a good question. My whole body just got goosebumps because I have. There have been a couple of different times in my life where I have encountered people and also people that my family, like different family members, have had stories where they've encountered people. So here's one example that I'm trying to think of one example that I can tell off the top of my head. So this one was kind of a weird one because I didn't actually see the entity, but the entity was next to me and someone else saw it. So I was in Boston. This is ages ago. This is in the 90s. I was in Boston, Mass. I went to Boston College. So I was, hanging out somewhere near the college. And I was walking down like an alleyway and something weird started. I don't remember exactly what all happened, but like cops came up and there was a guy there who had been harassing women around the city. And, and so I had myself, and I was just, kind of had like a run-in with him, but the cops were there. So they were getting him, but I was like nearby. Anyway, it was a whole complicated, weird situation. But the guy who was the cops were after was pretending to be a police officer. And so he had like a fake badge. And so I was confused because I'm walking along and late at night in the dark, after midnight in Boston, down an alleyway. And this random guy comes up to me, has like a fake badge. And there was something that then happened. Like I tried to get away and all this other weirdness happened. But at a certain point, he was away from me and I had tried to get away. And this was before the cops showed up. I know this is convoluted, but this is a very long time ago. I don't remember all the details. But
it sounds scary as all get out.
It was very scary. And as I was trying to get away before the cops showed up, I was like running down this one street, this like off the alleyway, and all these brownstones in a row. And there was a woman who just happened to be looking out her window when I was like running by. And she was on the first floor. So she came immediately outside and she was like, come in, come in, come in. And oh my God. I was like, thank you so much for letting me in. There was this creepy guy who was pretending to be, I thought he was a cop. He had a badge, but he was acting very off and very weird. And I didn't think it was a real cop. And she was like, oh, I just heard sirens and there was another incident going on. And so she was like, that's what she was paying attention to. I guess she was listening to the police scanner or something. You know, people do that. And so it was one of those weird, like I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. This random woman just happens to be there listening to all this. And she says to me, she goes, now in hindsight, I also don't know if she was a real human, but I think she was. But what she says to me, she goes, but so what happened to the person that was with you? And I said, what do you mean? And she goes, when you were running away from the guy, when the guy went in the other direction and you ran away from the guy, she's like, I saw the guy following you. I saw him then turn and go in a different direction. And then you came over this way. And she goes, but you were with someone, there was someone next to you who was with you. You weren't alone. So where's that person?
Right.
And I'm like, no, it was just me and the creepy guy. And then the police sirens, and then you showed up, and then the police, and then after, I guess she called the police too, because then they showed up. And she kept saying, no, but you were with someone. You were walking. I watched you turn the corner with someone. And I'm like, no, I wasn't. And she was like, I wonder if that's why the guy ran from you, because you were with somebody. And I kept saying I wasn't with somebody. There was no, but she was like, oh no, he stepped out of the shadows and stood next to you right when the guy turned and went in the other direction.
Well, did he look just like a regular guy?
She said he was really tall and he was in shadow. He was completely silhouetted, so she couldn't see any features. He was just much, much, much taller than me, like ridiculously tall, maybe 6'5" or something. Really, really tall, broad, not heavy, but broad. And maybe like a football player or basketball player or something like that. And I just kept saying, I don't know what you're
Your
talking about.
guardian.
Yeah. And at the time I was so freaked out by what happened. You know, when your brain just shuts up, you can't think logically. And that's why the details are all over the place, because I don't remember the exact chronology of events. But afterwards, when I told people, everyone said to me, that was your guardian angel, you know, because my Catholic family members. And I was like,
Well, I mean, that's what I got when you were telling me that.
right. And then the weird thing about that is that shortly after that experience happened, I went through a really, really tough time in college. I didn't know what I wasn't happy with a major. I was in poli-sci, and I was like a bleeding heart liberal on an ultra conservative Jesuit campus. And so I would like cry myself to sleep every night because I just felt like I was out, not in the right place, you know? And one night, and this was after that happened, I heard this, I was crying myself to sleep, and I hear this distinct voice say, we love you, Melissa. It's going to be okay. And then I felt something envelop me, and it had a distinct feeling of giant wings. And I wasn't raised religious. I have a Catholic grandma, I have a Protestant grandma. I wasn't raised, but I was raised agnostic. So I wasn't raised with any influence of any religion really, except for like broadly culturally Christian, you know? And so when this happened, and I'm like, is this an angel? Like, I don't believe in angels. I'm 20 something, you know what I mean? I'm a 20-year-old punk in Boston. I don't believe in angels. And then I have this amazing experience where this angel wraps its wings around me. And I think it was the same entity that was next to me. Oh, did I lose you? Uh-oh. Oh no. Something seems frozen.
Yeah, she's frozen up right at the moment, Melissa.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I was talking and then I realized she hadn't moved. And I was like, I think she's frozen.
Yeah, she is. Okay, she'll be right back and everything. As soon as she gets in, I'll pop off. But
Yeah.
so, yeah, well, that's good. Yeah. So you do tarot card reading, right?
I do. Yeah, I used to. I don't really do them so much anymore because now I kind of realize that my intuitive abilities are work a lot better if I don't use tools. You know, if I just kind of sit and close my eyes and listen. I hear messages from spirits and things like that. But on occasion, I will still pull out a tarot deck or two, just because it's good for clarification for people,
Right,
you
right,
know. And a lot of people, I think, is sort of, well, I was going to say you can't, I was going to say incorrectly, but I don't want to say incorrectly. But a lot of people think that tarot predicts the future, which in some cases it can, not always, though. I
right.
find tarot to be better for like figuring out what your current problem is. Like sometimes you're stuck and you don't know why. And you're like, what, something is negatively influencing me and I can't figure it out. And you do a tarot reading and it helps to sort of show you what is affecting you now and how to potentially how to change it for a better outcome.
Right, right. Yeah, there's a lot of different tarot card readings and stuff. I've had a few and everything. What if I go to a tarot card reader and they pull out the card? I want them to look at the card and tell me about it, not pull a book out and read.
Right, right.
That's it. And there's a lot of them that do that, and I'm like, if you're going to read the card, can't you come up with your own opinion and everything of what it means?
You know what I feel like that is I feel like that's fear. You know, I feel like sometimes because I used to use a book for when I was a teenager. I used a book all the time because I
Hmm.
was still learning the cards too. But like, I feel like sometimes people are afraid of their own intuition. And I think sometimes people are afraid of their own ability to look at the card and just get something from it. You know, one of the classes I teach is intuitive tarot. And the idea behind that is to sort of get away from the book definition of the card and see what you get from it, you know, like because tarot cards are filled with symbolism, and depending on the deck you get, it's going to have a variety of different types of symbolism. But there's the basic Pamela Coleman Smith Rider Waite tarot deck, and that one's my favorite just insofar as symbolism goes. And even if you just have a vague understanding of symbolism, you can pull a card and figure out what it means. Like it's so easy.
Right, right.
You know, I
So,
love that. We were just talking
okay, back
about.
to back. So everybody listen and watch.
See you later, Carl.
Sorry about that.
No
The,
worries.
the electrical thing that we had going on,
It's still
the
going on.
electrician came in and he was testing things. And so off I went.
Oh no.
Sorry about that.
You're back. That's okay. You know what's kind of funny is every time I ever do any kind of interview, there's always some sort of glitch that happens. And I'm always like, I'm so sorry. It's my spirit team is causing problems. But at least we know in your case it's a real technical problem.
Well, I will tell you that I get that too. So that's why I'm sitting there and you and Carl are just spinning and spinning and
Oh
spinning. And I'm like, what in the world? And then I look down and I have no internet.
no. Oh no.
And so I'm like freaking out. And then come to find out that the electrician was here, which is the reason the dogs went off, which is the reason da 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 da. And it's just like,
Timing.
Now, well, Robert has put in, Robert is a huge fan of Fate. He is a huge part of Fate.
Awesome.
So he said, I read an article for Fate about folks that wake up in their beds to see non-human intruders affecting flora and fauna. And do you have any thoughts about what these bedroom invaders could be?
Wow. I mean, I feel like the possibilities are limitless, honestly. It really, I feel like it depends on where you are, what's going on in your life, what you've opened yourself to, perhaps even what you've called in. Here's another example of a non-human entity that I saw because I thought of it while I was chatting with Carl. So a while ago, I was writing this book series called Saruman, and we had a writing session in someone else's house. And so I was sleeping in this woman's master bedroom while she, kind of like house sitting and using it at the same time. And I'm sleeping in the bed, and they had mentioned that the house was haunted, and so we had talked about that, and we were kind of like, I don't know if I don't remember if we actually tried to conjure spirits or not, but we were talking a lot about it. And all of a sudden, I wake up, and there's this woman standing at the foot of my bed. Well, I say standing. She was floating, let's be honest,
Yeah.
hovering. And she was dressed, she had this kind of like bonnety kind of a thing going on, kind of somewhat see-through-ish, and kind of an old-fashioned looking dress, either a modern day Amish or someone from, I don't know if this is the 1600s, maybe, clothing.
Sure.
Maybe 1800s. I don't know. I'm not a fashion guru, so I don't know. 1600, 1800s.
Probably not that period anyway, right?
Period.
But
So there's this figure there, and and for a minute I just freeze, because it's really rare to see at least for me, full blown apparitions. I'll see them in my mind, I'll feel them, I'll hear them, I'll sense them in some capacity, but to actually see an apparition is that's amazing. And so I'm looking at this apparition, and I just finally I go, can I help you? you know, you need
there
something,
be a service. Yeah.
right? You know, and I hear, she doesn't say anything out loud, but I get in my head, what is that? And I'm like, what is what? And I had fallen asleep with my iPad next to me. So I picked up the iPad and I turned it on, and I just kind of moved it around, and I just get this sense of like, I'm fascinated by this device and I want to know what it is. So I started explaining it, and then she twinkled away. And then she just literally just appeared to ask me what an iPad was, and then vanished. So I think that, to try to answer like why some of these entities show up, I mean, it's as different as the entity itself. In this case, it was a past human that was confused by modern technology. But you could also get a non-human entity that was, you could get an elemental, you could get a fairy. There's so many things, and there are so many unseen beings that we can't even begin to understand. We don't even know what to label them or call them. And, they could be ETs, they could be extra dimensional or ultra dimensional beings,
Yes.
So, I wouldn't be
I
surprised.
like the idea. I like the idea of the interdimensional.
Right?
I really think that is one of my favorite things, because we know they're different dimensions.
Yes.
That's not a secret or anything. And it's really interesting to me because people, like with ETs, oh, well, they had to travel thousands and thousands of light years. And I'm like, really?
Yes.
I don't think so. I think you can, I really think you can fold time.
I do
And
too.
I really think also that how presumptuous to think that we know everything there is to know about the universe, that we cannot even entertain a possibility. No
I
problem
agree.
with that.
I
So
totally, yes.
yeah,
And
because if we
I have a crazy theory too, if I can share it.
oh, please do. I love crazy theories.
I actually wrote this in a fictional sci-fi novel because I was like, I don't know how to express this theory without making it be fictional.
I bet it was perfect.
Right. So I have this like crazy theory that gravity behaves differently in different areas of space, and that the closer you are to a solar system or star, what have you, it's going to be heavier and denser and slower, and that out further in the vast distances between solar systems, that it's sort of like thinner, I don't know how, it's just like thinner, faster space, for like thinner gravity, so that if you were to travel, the spaceship would go faster in these interspaces versus in a solar system. I know that sounds totally batshit, but
no, it doesn't, because that was the whole premise of Contact, was the highways.
right.
And when the very first time I saw that, I'm sitting there, and because I get stuff, and I I will recognize it more often when it's presented to me because the deja vu is stupid.
Yes.
But I mean, it's so. But the first time I saw Contact, I'm just sitting there watching, and as the ball is falling, I'm like, "We're gone. She
Yep.
is not there." And then there we go. And I loved it that when she, like, the person that presented as an older woman, you know, well, they're not there to scare us to death.
Right.
And we don't really know why they choose to interact with who they do, but it presented as her dad
Yeah. So
so
beautiful.
that she wouldn't be afraid. I thought that was a beautiful movie,
Me
and
too.
then I love that.
It's
But,
genius.
and that's why I started getting into ufology and stuff because as I'm going through, and I grew up during the Apollo period, and I mean, the possibilities are endless. And at that point, we were breaking every barrier down.
Right.
And I had people that I knew that worked in it, and it was just always fascinating. So I was all about, and I had a geeky guy that lived next door to my grandmother, who had a capsule, like the tent capsule. So we would go to space all the time. And he was a Star Trek freak. And he
Yes.
just kept telling me, I'm going to, you know, I'm going to be, writing for Star Trek. I'm going to be doing this and that and the other. I said, why don't you work for NASA? And he was like, well, no, I'm going to work on Star Trek. So fast forward to I have children in college, right? And my daughter is worrying about not fulfilling dreams.
Mm.
And I said, if Lee Shackelford, a little boy from Gardendale, Alabama, who had a dream, can grow up and be a script writer and producer on Star Trek, you can do whatever in the world you want to do. And she was like, Lee Shackelford, he was her script writing instructor. Yeah.
Get
And
out
she
of
was
here.
like, yeah, I mean, she's like, I didn't know he did that. I said, talk to him, tell him that your mom said hi. And so she she did, and it was so fun because I ran into him at one of their productions. She was a theater majors, not really done her a lot of good, but she did stick it out and got it. So that says a lot about it. So I saw him, and it was just like, hey. And he was like, she's yours. I said, she is mine. Yes, yes, she is mine. And but it was so interesting. Hey, Tom and Nicholas, it was the space race, dude. It was so bizarre. But you know, everybody was trying to get there. Everybody was fighting to be there.
Right.
And
What's weird is
then all of a sudden nobody wants to do it anymore.
well, I wonder if it's because of because my sort of young adult or young child, what year did that even happen? Was I a child? What year did the Challenger blow up?
Oh my gosh, my son was a child. That he was a baby. That would be 85.
85. So I was like 11 years old. So like that's that was my big
Yeah.
introduction to NASA was seeing, we watched it happen in school, in class, on
Right.
TV, like live. And I remember
Yeah.
like the hush coming over and kids burst out crying and some of us going, wait,
Yeah.
what happened? What's happened? Because we didn't know what was going on. It was crazy. And like,
And there was a teacher aboard. That's why all the school kids were so involved in watching that. Because
right.
Krista McAuliffe was the first non-NASA person, and
And it
she
was,
was a elementary teacher.
I know it was horrifying, but it
It
was,
was.
and it was weird though, because I like, that was like an early memory. And I can't help but wonder if that sort of like, traumatized my entire generation.
Well, it had to. I mean, it traumatized me, and I was like, what, 25, 26?
Right. Yeah.
And it was just the most bizarre thing. And well, it traumatized the world because Tom Brokaw had been dating the female astronaut Judah.
Right.
And so, he's watching this happen and trying to be, Joe Newsman. And it was so tragic. The whole thing was so bizarre. And
It was, and I think
it's,
it negatively affected, space exploration since then, you know?
well, because it was such a public fail,
Right, such a public
such
fail.
a public fail.
But at the same time, I was obsessed with all of that stuff. I grew up, my dad, and I would watch Star Trek when I was the old Star Trek when I was a kid.
Yes, the real Star Trek.
Yeah, and then later though, I would watch Star Trek Next Generation because
I love that.
I was just the right age when that came out,
Yeah.
and I loved all the characters so much. I wanted to be Deanna Troy, and sometimes now I feel like I am.
Just naughty. But
But it's funny with the UFO stuff because like when I was a kid, I would have, I could talk about witches because Salem was in Massachusetts.
right.
I could talk about ghosts because it's kind I mean, Massachusetts is just haunted. Like all of New England is
Yes.
wicked haunted. And you can't turn around without bumping into a haunted house there. So it's like even people who are wicked down to earth will still be like, well, I don't believe in all that, but my house is haunted,
Yeah.
So it's like I grew up being like thinking all this stuff was mostly acceptable, but the one thing that was not acceptable, you could not say you saw a UFO. If you said you saw a UFO, you were crazy and you had to be shipped off to the loony bin. And
Yes.
right. And yet when I was a kid, man, I saw them all the time. Because I was one of those kids, like I could never sleep. And there was a cornfield between my house and my grandma's house. So I would go out in the middle of the cornfield and just lie there and stare.
Yeah.
And it was Massachusetts in the middle of freaking nowhere. We had no light pollution back then. So, you could just look at the Milky Way and just, and because you could see with such clarity, I could see if there was like a weird pinprick of light that moved in an odd way. And so all the time I would see these lights, especially in Provincetown, like out in the tip of Cape Cod, because there's even better light there or less light pollution there.
Right.
But I would see these dots of light, they would appear and then they would blink out and then they would appear someplace else. And then sometimes they would move in like a weird 90-degree zigzaggy kind of way. And, when I was a kid, I would try to tell people this and they'd be like, oh, it's just your imagination, Melissa. You're just, you and your vivid imagination. Okay. And then when I got
Older,
older,
I still get that. Yeah.
and then I got older and then everyone, oh, it's a satellite. That's all it, well, I saw them when I was a kid in the 70s. So in the 80s and satellites I see, you can track them. You can look them up and be like, oh, let's check if it is a satellite.
And they move steadily.
Exactly. They're like,
yes, there's no variation.
No variation. They don't blink in and out. So, for a long time, my whole life, I'm like, I know I've seen UFOs, but nobody would believe me. So I just won't tell anybody ever. And then I had a really weird, I don't know, I think I might have shared this with you at some, I think I shared this experience with you at one point a while ago, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe it was with Andrea Perrin instead, but I shared this. I also shared it with George Nori on Coast to Coast. Oh, but I had this he's so fun. He asks really good questions. But I had this weird experience where I was out on the tip of Provincetown. There's this it's called a breakwater, and it goes out into the water, and it's supposed to protect from erosion. Regardless, if you're out in the middle of this thing, you are surrounded by water on both sides, aside from the rocks that you walk out. So I went out there with a group of people, and it wasn't even like a big group. It was like maybe 2 or 3 other people, something like that. Anyway, they went on ahead. I think they were smoking weed or something. So they went on ahead, and I was in a very I don't drink, I don't do anything kind of phase. Like I was just like, I just want Dr. Pepper and that's it. And so they went on ahead to do what they were doing. And I just lay down on the rocks, staring at the sky like a dork. And I was in a really this was part of the bad part of my life. I was kind of miserable and I was like, life is so hard. Why are we even here? And I was staring off into the sky and I was in my mind, I was like, I just want to go home. Because you know how you can just envision where we come I'm like, I just want to go home. I know it's so much better there. So it's like imagining being like, drifting away. And then all of a sudden, this weird pinprick of light shows right above me, and it's green. So it's not any color of, stars,
Right.
red or blue or white, or yellow. And this is green. So I'm like, this is weird. And then it gets bigger and bigger. And as it moves, as it sort of like, almost like it's coming for me, but still very far away. And then all of a sudden it kind of like breaks off into 4 points. And then those 4 points become a cube, like a cubed hallway, almost like looking down the outline of an elevator shaft. And I'm like looking up at it, and it opens up around me, this shaft, and the center light turns into an eye and gets closer and closer. And I'm like, in my head, like, did I fall asleep? Like, what is
Right.
happening right now? I don't remember falling asleep, but do you remember falling asleep? Probably not. And the next thing I know, I feel like I'm floating. Like I don't feel the hard rock on my back anymore. And I feel like a breeze beneath me. But at the same time, I know I'm like, I'm not floating. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm still on, I'm like in my head, I'm on the rock. I'm not floating, but I'm feeling it's weird. It was a weird thing. So I float up, and the next thing I know, I'm in this space. It almost is like a pool, but not wet. Holographic maybe. And in front of me are 4 figures sort of silhouetted with a light behind them. I get this feeling I'm not permitted to see them. I'm not, because I won't be able to. For some reason, my eyes can't see these people. It will shock me or hurt me in some kind of a way, and they don't want to do that. I get the sense that there may be 2 male and 2 female, but I'm not too sure about that because the gender thing seemed really genderless at the same time. And they're like, we understand you want to come home. And if you want to come home, you can come home right now. And I'm like, I can. And this whole conversation is happening in my head. It's telepathic.
Sure.
And so I'm like, am I hearing this? Am I hearing you? And they're like, yeah. So conversation in my head with them. And I'm like, okay. And then they say to me, so if you're that miserable and you want to come home, you can come home right now. But know that if you choose to do that, you can no longer be this person. You will never be in this body again. You will never be this person again. Melissa will cease to be. And also know that you will have not fulfilled your life purpose. So you'll have to come back. And I was like, oh, hell no.
I'm not starting this over again.
Good was hard enough. Like, I'm good. Like, let's get through this. So I somehow I know what to do in the last moment. Like I have this almost like a ticking clock, and I have to make a decision in a certain period of time. And if this eye comes down and touches me, I'm going to go away. But if I can somehow break free of it, and I'll be back on the rock. So I do what I need to do, which is kind of like just take a deep breath and sit up, bolt upright. And then I go plunk on like I feel my body hit the rock. And I just sit there and I'm like, well, that was freaking weird. And I look around like, did I fall asleep? Am I like, and I get off the rock, the breakwater, and I head back to the beach, and there are my friends. But they had gone beyond me. So if they were going to walk back, they would have to pass me on the rocks. And they say to me, where were you? Where did you go? And I said, well, where were you? I thought you were down the rocks. I've been on the rock the whole time. I never saw you walk past. And they go, we walked right past here and you weren't here. So where did you go?
Oh my goodness.
And when did we got into a fight about it because they didn't believe me that I didn't know anything. So,
that's funny. Yeah.
Yes. And that night didn't end well, but I was like, I carried that with me for a long time because I was like, what happened to me, And I was still in college at the time. So I went back to Boston College after, summer break. And I went to a priest. I went to a Buddhist teacher. I went to a counselor. I went to like as many people on campus, like experts that I could find on campus to talk to me. And every single person I talked to was basically just poo-pooed it. Just one person was like, "Oh, you're doing too many drugs," and I'm like, I wasn't doing any. Another person just said I just fell asleep. It was just a dream. They all kind of just poo-pooed it, and but I was convinced that I had some kind of
Did the Buddhist also poo-poo it?
yes, which particularly upset me because I thought of all the people that was going to
Yes.
have a good answer, it would be the Buddhist teacher, and he was the one
Yeah.
who said, "Don't do drugs."
It's like,
I know.
sorry, Geishla, I was not doing drugs.
Exactly. Like, stone cold sober. Thank you very much. So I carried this experience with me my whole life. It made me obsessed with all things, even more so. Like I had like a little bit of an inkling for this stuff, but after that experience, I was like, I need to know everything there is to know about this. So I started talking to people, researching everything. I stumbled on one odd thing that only gave me more questions. Um, and
Okay, now you have to tell me.
so
What was
that
that?
was, so do you know the author Philip K. Dick?
Mm-hmm.
He wrote like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which became Blade Runner. It's this famous one, and a lot of others too, Minority Report and so on. And so there's a zillion. He's written so many different
Right.
things, many movies, a lot of books. And he wrote this book called Valis a long time ago. And the reason why he wrote this book was he had this really weird experience where he felt like he was beamed, like a beam of pink light, like beamed into his head and gave him information. And that the author experienced that in real life and then wrote this book Valis based on that bizarre experience. And aspects of it, not exactly the same as mine, but aspects of it were so similar that I felt connected to this author. Come to find out that when this man had this experience, when he got beamed with this information, the exact same day I was born.
Get out.
Isn't that crazy?
That is cool.
I know. So then I was like,
You're
okay,
crazy.
totally crazy. So I was like, okay, what? I mean, it's probably just a random coincidence, but at the same time, I'm like, it kind of propelled me on this like alien path because I was like, who exactly is giving us this information?
Well, exactly. I sit there and you're telling me this, and it sounds a lot like Whitley Strieber's experiences when they started with him. It's also interesting because, um, it's really that's how because Travis was taken into his craft on a beam. So, of course, he was injured. So,
Right.
they were fixing him. But he also, when he woke up, they were presenting as bugs and he freaked out, right? So he started fighting and they left because he came up to kill them. I mean,
Wow.
all he knew was he had known that he was very damaged and when he would come to here and there. And then when he woke up enough, and then that's what he saw, he was trying to kill him. So they
Wow.
left and came back as Nordics. And so they present in a way that you can deal with, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And it's really interesting to me that that's how you felt like you were being brought on or interacting, right? Because that's a normal from just the experiencers I've interviewed, talked to, and just hung out with, that's a common way of getting you to them. So
Interesting.
it
Huh.
is. I mean, I have dogs. I'm outside, right? So I've got, well, my hammock broke. I've got one coming, but I'm a hammock layer.
Mhm.
And now I'm a gravity chair layer until my hammock gets here. But it's so funny because I see stuff a lot. I've seen something that I was concerned was going to evolve into an abduction thing. I was on the phone with someone and said, do not hang up.
Wow.
Do not hang up. Please, just don't hang up. And so that was pretty interesting. So it was just
it's a weird experience.
Yeah. It is a weird experience. And what I saw was basically I was on my deck and it was like eyeball to eyeball with me. My neighbor's yard goes, drops down.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it was right over, it wasn't even at the top of the trees. And it
Wow.
was in a cloud. It was in a green cloud.
Wow.
And it,
Green. Oh,
and
so
it,
green.
yeah. And
Weird.
it came out of the cloud just a
Interesting.
little bit and it was metallic. And then it's like it stopped, but the cloud caught back up with it and it went.
That is so
And,
interesting.
and I watched it go. I watched it come. It was moving so slow. And that's why I was getting wigged out. I mean, I didn't want to run in the house because, we're
Yeah.
making game, right?
Right.
So I was just like, no, we're
I
good.
think I think I'm gonna have to read more. You said Whitley Strieber and Travis, because I think I'm gonna have to read more about both of their experiences. I haven't actually read much of Whitley Strieber, to be honest. Am I saying his name
Yeah,
right? I haven't
you
read
are.
much of him. Travis, is it Walton? Travis
It
Walton?
is.
Walton?
And
I,
and
I
he
I've never read his book. I feel like did he write a book too?
is Fire in the Sky.
I've seen the movie, but I've never read it, so I feel like I need to.
Well, it was really, I mean, when he was talking about that, I I didn't know if that was a common thing with abductees, right? Because I hadn't really talked to that many, maybe five at that point.
Right.
And it was fascinating to me because he literally came up off of whatever it was they had him laying on to kill them.
It's crazy.
And they left the room and came back bigger than him, you know,
I know.
but very calming in appearance, right?
It blows my mind. And the interesting thing about Travis is I went to I went to the very first Contact in the Desert when in Joshua Tree.
Yeah.
And I was at the time I was obsessed with Eric von Daniken because had just read Chariots of the Gods, which my dad
Yes.
had when I
Was
was
he
a kid.
there?
He was there, yeah, he was there.
Oh,
Georgie was
I
there.
love him.
Giorgio Tsoukalos was there. George Norrie was
Mhm.
there. All of the heavy hitters were there. Everybody.
Yeah.
I think Linda, I forget, I'm blanking on her name, but
Milton Howe.
thank you. She was there. Like everybody was there. And there was also a woman who used to be on Star Trek. She's since passed away, but her name was Celeste. I forget her last name, but she was also there and she was fascinating. She had some really interesting experiences. But I went to a panel of abductees. And what's really weird is at this particular time in my life, I didn't consider that experience that I had an abductee experience. I didn't know what it was. I just knew it was weird, you know?
Yeah.
And actually didn't consider an abductee experience until I told Andrea Perrin about it. And she was the one who was like, oh, girl, you were abducted. And I was like, oh my gosh, really? And, but when I saw this,
You're given a choice.
yeah, I was at this Contact in the Desert, and there's a panel of abductees, and each one went down the line and were sharing their stories. And I'm not going to say who I believed and who I didn't believe because I don't want to, call anybody out. But
Right.
there were a couple of people who shared stories that just didn't feel true to me. Maybe they were, but for whatever reason, I didn't vibrate with or resonate with the story. But when Travis told his story,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I broke out in a cold sweat.
I
I
never doubted his.
goosebumps everywhere.
Yeah.
I felt absolute genuine fear and terror. And I was like, this man is not lying. Like he went through
No.
hell, you know?
Well, he did. And I mean, with the way that it ended, I mean, there were actual witnesses who saw him taken. And those people they're going to charge them with murder
Right.
because, they had a vested interest in finding him. And, so I think that because Travis is really reticent, he's not a big, let's talk, he's not
Right.
one of those hell fellows, hardy fellows, well met or whatever,
Yeah.
but he's very intense. And so I think that he's still so damaged by that that experience that I don't know if he'll ever be right, but
Right.
it's still because that was so intrusive. Oh,
So
and
true.
Robert said many UFOs come out of and go into clouds and mists. Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it seems like a good way to hide yourself if you don't want to be seen.
It was daytime.
Yeah.
It was middle of the afternoon, right?
And
And I live,
sometimes there are weird clouds too. You see them on the internet. Someone will
yeah.
take and they'll be like, this cloud is particularly weird. And I'm like, something's going
Well,
on there.
this one was green.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean, it was like, and I mean, I live in Tornado Alley. I've seen green clouds, right? I know what they look like. And it
right.
wasn't that because we didn't have any kind of weather happening.
So wild.
So
Wow.
I figured they just did that because that's what they thought it was supposed to look like. I don't know.
Possibly.
But I do have a question
Yeah.
here, and it's kind of interesting. And Randy said, just throwing this out there because sometimes it pays off, although I don't believe in coincidence. Spirits, guardian angels, etc.
Mhm.
Does the name Thibodeau mean anything to you?
I just got chills from that
I have
name.
a Thibodeau.
I don't even know what that word means, but it has a very
Well, it's a town in Louisiana, but it's also the name of a spirit in New Orleans.
oh, that would make sense. Okay.
So,
Interesting. Okay. I'm going to have to take a deep dive on that later.
yeah. Well, I picked that up. One of my friends does ghost tours in New Orleans. She's really good, and you might know her. Her name's she goes by Bloody Mary of New
Wow,
Orleans.
Bloody Mary. I follow her on Instagram. I love her.
She's amazing. But I had been David Plays Poker. We were there, and I just reached out and said, "Hey, I'm in town. If you want to get together." Blah 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 blah. She was like, "Well, I'm doing a tour tonight, so I was like, well, if there's room, I'll come and we'll talk."
Yeah.
So the people, because it was a private one, it wasn't one of her, and they were like, "Yeah, tell her to come on."
Nice.
So it was nice, and she and I have weird connections. It's so fun. But when we had gone into one of the areas, it was like, "Who is that?" And she was like, "What?" I said, "Thibodeau? Sarah Thibodeau?" So when I saw that, that's why I said it to you first, because I was going to wait and see if that was yours. So
Yeah, I
it's
don't.
just kind of weird.
So that's a strange. As I have like a weird. I get a weird feeling from that name. So I definitely have, and I feel like I've heard it before. Is it in any old plays or texts?
Well, Thibodeau is a place in Louisiana.
Okay.
So
I feel like I've heard it, but I'll have to Google it later and see what I can find on that.
yeah, but it's just interesting because this is somebody that had just reached out to me recently, and so it was interesting. So
Yeah.
it's just one of those things, right?
It is.
That show up.
There are so many strange spirits around us all the time, and like I said before, like stuff that we can't even begin to really comprehend. We don't even really know what they are, and maybe it's that we can't. Maybe something about having a human mind in a fleshy body.
Yeah.
We're not capable of understanding certain things. I mean, just the simple fact that there are colors we can't see, sounds we can't hear.
The colors make me crazy.
Right?
I want to see those.
Me too.
I mean, how could they be kept from us, right?
I know. It blows my
We
mind.
need to be developing, lenses that we can see through and get those.
Get all the different things. I know.
The whole spectrum.
The whole spectrum. It's crazy because there's all stuff that's happening all around us all of the time. And one thing that I've noticed as I've gotten older, and as I go through the different, changes of life, it's like I feel like I get more and more abilities, which is weird, but also I'm constantly, learning and practicing and training. Like I feel like when you start to delve into this type of stuff, you never stop learning because it's endless what you can learn.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've started to notice, talk about like unseen things. I never saw this before, but what I see, something that I can see now, in addition to auras, because I've always seen auras, I've always seen halos of light around people. I've had my eyes checked a zillion times. They're fine. I mean, now I'm getting older, so they're slightly degenerative. I don't have as clear sight, but I don't have anything that would create an aura. There's nothing going on that should happen, that should do that. But in
Right.
addition now to auras, what I see sometimes between people are cords. I'll start to see like energetic cords running, and I'll see a mom and her kids, and I can see these cords from her heart going down to the kids. I can see cords between lovers. I can see, it's the craziest thing. And it
That's
came,
very cool, though.
it is cool. And it started like, I want to say about 10 years ago, here and there. And now I can see them more and more. If I really focus, I can see them better. But it's just another example of things that we can't normally see, is our energy, our own energy, and how we're not just our physical body. We're this, like, 3 feet or more of energy coming off of us,
Is it 3 feet?
I'm just throwing that out there. I read that in a book a long time ago, that it was that the aura spreads to about 3 feet beyond our body. But
Really?
I'm sure it's pretty nebulous. You know what I mean? It's probably
Sure.
sometimes really close if we're afraid. And if you feel very open and comfortable and maybe in a sound bath, you're probably like 10 feet,
Yeah.
you know?
I tell you, that's one of the things that I too love Contact in the Desert. But I had one year I've covered Alien Con, the Ancient Aliens thing, then Contact. There were 2 others. I had a big UFO summer that summer.
Nice.
But and I got to hear Von Daniken lecture 4 times in that
Amazing.
one summer.
Wow.
And I was just like, and it was the first year that they brought it out of Joshua Tree into Indian Wells.
Yes.
So it was funny because Tracy Dolan was like, "You are so lucky that you can wear open-toed shoes. It's just great. You're going to love this." And I was like, she said, "No snakes, no scorpions. You're safe." And
Yeah.
I was like, glad I waited till now. But you know, those things are so cool. And getting to hear him lecture was such a gift. And to hang out, Contact, you hang out at the pool after, and
Mhm.
everybody's just kind of, different little places and stuff. And it's really neat. It's really neat to be able to learn from him
Yeah.
because, I mean, he was such a badass as a 17-year-old, right?
Right.
And he'd go work and make money and go, and then go home and make money and go.
It's it's
And
amazing. I mean, it's just,
what 17-year-old does that?
I know. He's like he was discovering he was kind of a game changer for me, because I was like, oh, you can just do things. You can, it's okay to ask questions also. It's
Yeah.
okay to look at the world and be like, these are kind of bizarre. Let's put a big question
Yeah.
mark over all of it.
Yes. And it's a big deal.
I love
And
his mind. He's so brilliant. And he the fact that he could piece things together. He sees the patterns,
yeah,
and I don't know, I just find him brilliant.
yeah. And I was really, I just couldn't believe it. That was my favorite. And I always call that my UFO summer
I love it.
because as a rule, I mean, I got so into this, and for whatever reason, the guy that was over Prometheus Entertainment, the guy that started Ancient Aliens,
Mhm.
gave me credentials for their very first one, right?
Awesome.
So I'm out there, Sempran, having a good time, doing, all the stuff. David's out there playing poker. So he just picks me up, and it was the one they had. They expected 3,000, they got 10, so it was really a cluster. And it was the best time that I've ever had at a conference.
Awesome.
because they didn't care, right? They're just like, yeah, you just go do that. Yeah, you just go do that. And that's where I met George and Tani, and you
Oh,
know, got to be podcaster of the month or whatever. And it was so much fun because I had no idea I'd ever be on Coast to Coast, right?
right.
So that was cool. That was a great summer.
That's an
And I
awesome.
learned so much that I didn't know about
Right.
UFOs.
I need a UFO summer.
I know, right?
Oh man, if
But
you ever go to another con, let me know. I'll tag along.
I'll see that. But because most of them are out in your part of the world anyway.
Yeah, and it's just been a long. I haven't been to one since the first contact. That's a long time ago now. I think it's due. I'm due, and now
I
that
think
I'm
you're due.
right, and now that I'm sort of coming out of my UFO shell, I feel I'm not as scared to talk about this stuff anymore. And I still, it's really funny though, because in my little witch world, all my social media is like witch centric
Yeah.
basically. And but I can talk about witchcraft, I can talk about ghosts, I can talk about all that stuff, and people really don't bat an eyelash. And you start talking about aliens and people are like, whoa, she's crazy.
Well, I just can't go there with you. I know, right?
It's so
And
funny.
it is because I look at people in that situation and I'm like, really? That was the line? I
Right.
mean, out of all of this stuff, that's the one.
That's the
And
line. Okay.
it's hilarious, right?
But I just love it, and I love diving into that world. And I want to dive more into that world because just recently I had this incredible opportunity where I got to meet Daryl Anka, who channels Bashar. And I had seen tons of his TikTok, like the TikTok videos and what have you, where he's channeling. And I'm one of those people where even though I do mediumship and even though I channel people, I'm always skeptical of other people who do it, which I realize is ridiculous, but it's because
It's an unusual thing.
it's an unusual thing. And, and depending, with mediumship is a little easier. Channeling aliens to me is very difficult. Like I find that hard to do. Like I can talk to any spirit, no problem. But talking to aliens kind of throws me, and it only
Does
has
it
happened.
make you uncomfortable or do
Makes
you
me
feel like
very uncomfortable. Yeah. So the first time it happened that I am really cognizantly aware of was right after the lockdown happened and everyone was losing, the pandemic and all that stuff. Everyone was freaking out. And so I was doing a lot of meditation because the energy was just a lot to handle at that time, a lot of anxiety. And so I was sitting in meditation, and when I'm doing my normal meditation, I'm just kind of like yammering away with my guides. Like sometimes I'm quiet, but sometimes I'm just like, oh, do you have any messages for me? What's going on? Do I need to know anything? That kind of a thing. And I was sitting there listening to my guides, and then all of a sudden, the energy completely shifted. It no longer, like when my guides talk to me, or it's usually like calming. I feel safe. I feel protected. I feel like I'm in a fuzzy bubble, fuzzy warm bubble. But when this other entity came in that I didn't know was aliens at first, it was cold and metallic and staticky. And so like my guide coming through would just be like kind of, sing-songy, like, oh, and then this other voice that came through was like this weird sound. And then a voice would break through. I think she's hearing us. She's definitely on the right frequency. I think she's hearing us. She's not acknowledging us, but we think she's hearing us. And I just sat there stone cold like a statue, like, it's happened. I've finally lost my mind. Like I need to call a doctor, And so I keep hearing this, like she's not acknowledging us and we don't know why. So finally I just kind of out loud, I just go, I acknowledge you. Cause I didn't know, And then I hear confirmation, acknowledgement received. And I'm like, what the heck this is not how guides talk. This is not how fairies talk.
That's
Or
hilarious.
it was very weird. And then they said something like, stay tuned for more information or something like that, more contact. It was kind of going in and out. I was losing connection. And then when the connection ended, all the static it was like someone just turned off an old radio tuned to the wrong channel, just completely. And then it was clear, zoop, totally clear, to the point where like I hopped up and I ran outside and I looked outside because I was like, is someone out here playing a radio, or is there noise or something? It was nothing out there. I tried to go back into meditation and I could get my guides and I couldn't get back that voice. But I've since gotten a couple more messages from them. Some of them have been full-blown channeling, and I remember nothing afterwards, but I'll have written in the interim. And the handwriting is not my own. It's weird handwriting, hard to read, and doesn't even look like it should be letters, but you can kind of read it. And I've gotten just messages like, we're on our way. We're delayed. We're held up for some reason. We come in peace. I've gotten many times, which I think is really strange because people always use that to be funny in a movie, but I've actually gotten, and I've
that's the hope, right?
That's the hope. I don't think they all come in peace though. And then I've gotten like things like we're coming to help, like, and we're trying to contact as many people on the planet as we can so that you don't all freak out when we show up, basically, because we're coming earlier and you're going to be ready for us as a global human species. And so the idea is those of us who've been activated or been talked to, we're supposed to help the other people deal. So, or something like that. And I just sit there and I get this information. And I'm just like, okay, what do I do with it?
Well, you hold it because, what you are now is a placeholder for the transition that people are going to be having to deal with.
Right.
And I mean, that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, that is.
And
I never thought of that, but yeah, that sounds right.
So, because people, seriously, when it happens, people are going to be tripping. I mean, I always thought that War of the Worlds was a test run.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And we failed.
Big time.
As a society, we failed. People were dying.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that they've been terrified to actually bring that conversation to the fore because, that's not going to go well if it happens again. People are a lot meaner now. So,
True.
Yeah, and we've seen all the movies. So, it's just kind of, they're going to have people like you out there.
And people like you,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually not under fire. We have fireworks going on. But,
we had a couple bangs too. I was going to say, I don't know if you can hear the bangs. There's been
well, I'm not sure, because I'm using a bud because of all the stuff.
Right.
But, so I'm not sure that it's coming through.
Yeah, I didn't hear it.
It sounds like a 21 gun salute from where I'm sitting.
Oh, no.
But, well, it's just fun. I love 4th of July. But, it stands to reason that they're going to need somebody here so that, if they come to the South, they're going to be barbecue. So, right. They want people to know. This is so weird of a topic for you. Are you okay with this?
Oh, me? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because this is so much fun because I had no idea. I had some idea, but that you had so much interest in it. And, we love all the same people for the information. It's pretty cool.
It is, yeah. And I'm still sort of coming out of that shell too. So I'm okay talking about it. Plus I'm just comfortable talking to you about anything. But it's and I feel like I want to talk about it more because even though people think it's crazy, there's been enough other people. Every time I bring this up, every time I do an interview where I even remotely mention the UFO stuff, I get emails, DMs, I get all kinds of messages from people saying, thank you for bringing this up, because I have had really weird experiences too, and I've been afraid to talk about it. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm already weird because of the mediumship and the witchcraft. So I might as well talk about this too. Like, I'm good with being labeled as a weirdo. I'm good with people thinking I'm crazy because I'm having a blast. Do you know what I mean?
Right?
Like,
I do.
I love my life. I love you. I love all the people I meet who are into this stuff. I love talking about it. I love my clients and my students. Like, I love everybody who's into all of this stuff. And I love this community so much that I'm just like, bring it. Call me whatever you want. I love my life.
Exactly. And, and you're very good at all of those things. So it's not like you're going to get tarnished or something.
Right? I
Your
know.
reputation is sound. You're okay to discuss, wacky doodle stuff.
Right.
But it's so cool because I had no idea we were going to go along this path.
Me
So
neither.
I'm good with that. So
I was planning to talk about animal communication, and we talked about animals before we even got on the air. And I meant to loop that back in, and I completely forgot because of the alien thing. But because that's the class that I have coming up. I'm like, now do we need to do a class about aliens? But not yet. I need more study for that. But yeah, no, I have a bunch of classes coming up too. But the funny thing about that is the class that I have coming up, which is Intro to Pet Communication, on July 30th at the Green Man store, but not at the store. It's on Zoom. So anybody anywhere can join. And I did that on purpose so people can have their animals with them. So we can do animal readings at the end. But the funny thing about animal communication, I find animal communication similar to alien communication, different, but similar. And because animal communication is different than talking to spirits. But I feel like once you learn how to talk to animals, you can talk to spirits, aliens, anything. Animals are kind of like the gateway to talking to all the things. Yeah, I totally believe that. Yeah, because animals are, I think part of it is because they're real. Yeah, I mean, not to say that spirits and aliens aren't,
right.
but
they're tangible.
Yeah, they're tangible. They're physical. So, we can see them. And most people who have animals, most people, not everybody, because some people are closed to this, but most people who have animals, even if they don't believe in ghosts or aliens or anything else, they know you can communicate with an animal, and they know that an animal can communicate back. Animals are very good letting us know if they're hurt or they need something, And so like I teach Intro to Animal Communication as sort of like a little gateway for people to start like learning to listen with their other ear, so to speak, so that they can, and once you start like hearing what your cat really needs or your horse or whomever, then it's just one small step to hearing what the spirits are saying.
And that's interesting. I've never heard anybody make that correlation, but it's true.
It's totally true. I never heard anyone make that correlation either. And I stumbled on it by accident. And it was, as I've taught this class many times now, I was in the middle of teaching the class and someone asked a question about the correlation. And it dawned, I had a light bulb moment. And I was like, oh my gosh, it is all connected.
Yeah.
And
well, because you're utilizing the same tools, right?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Absolutely. It all comes from, it's really intuition. That's sort of like the base part of it, and then people can get caught up in like, well, what is intuition anyway? Well, it's a lot of different things, because it's telepathy is one of them. Some people can actually hear other people's thoughts. I can, and not super clear. It's not like speaking, you know what I mean? You just get like little words here and there, you might get like yellow tomato, but have no idea why they're thinking about a yellow tomato, so that's part of it. And once you can sort of tap into flexing the sort of like telepathic vibes with an animal, then you can converse with spirit, you converse with alien, and eventually you can even hear a human being's thoughts if you want to a small degree. You know what I mean? It's never super clear.
Well, most of our minds are so busy with so many different things, it would be hard, I would think, it would be very hard to get a clear reading from a human,
It is. It is very hard. Um,
unless
some
they were focusing too.
I was literally
Like,
just gonna say that.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and that's to tie it back to tarot readings, because I like tying loose ends. Tie it back to tarot readings. The best way to do a tarot reading for a person is to have them think of a question and really focus on the question, like really like not think about their laundry, not think about what they got to buy. You know what I mean? Like, what is your question, and focus on it. And so then when you do the reading, it comes through so much stronger. And that happens the same with an intuitive reading or a mediumship reading, anything that where a person is focusing their thoughts, you can read it so much clearer, So when I was younger, I used to think that when a person focused their question on tarot, that somehow the card itself was like reading the person's mind. Like, that's what I
yes.
literally thought as a child. And now I realize, no, they're focusing their question so that you can read it, you can feel it.
Mhm.
And even if you don't know exactly what they're thinking, you get a really good general vibe of it, like,
Yeah.
and it helps to know like that most readings fall under very simple categories. And once you get the right category, it's really easy to figure it out from there, you know?
Really?
Yeah. Everybody always wants to know either about love, money, and when money is also career, kind of both together. And then the other one that most people want to know about is, am I psychic? So it's usually like, I have a question: does this person love me? Am I going to get this job, or should I do this other career, or am I psychic? Those are almost always what people ask.
Don't you think that if they're asking, they already know?
I know they know. I always know they know. As soon as I vibe that from a person, I'm like, I already know what you're going to ask me, and you already know the answer to the question that you're going to ask
Right.
me. And they're always like, how do you know? I'm like, because I know. I
Yeah, right?
know. We know.
Because, you're putting it out here.
Right,
So
exactly.
obviously you're communicating with me. So
Exactly. It's funny.
that's fun.
But that's why I think it works, is to put the bow on the top of all of it. It's all about telepathy at the end of the day. Speaking with the aliens, speaking with spirits, speaking with animals, and intuiting and reading other people. All of it comes from telepathy. And like when I was growing up, people always tried to say it wasn't real. It wasn't real. No, 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 no. And I knew as a child it was real. I would be in the back seat of my parents' car, a little kid, kicking my legs, humming little jingle bells in the middle of summer. And, in the back of the Volkswagen Bug, my parents, my dad would be driving, my mom in the passenger seat, or vice versa. And if it was a long drive, there would be lulls of quiet, and I could hear their thoughts clear as day as a child. I don't hear them as clearly now. I think that's
Right?
just you fill your head with more stuff,
Yeah.
but even to this day, if I'm hanging out with my mom or my dad long enough, I can totally hear their thoughts. They would hate. I've never told them this. This is something I've never told.
Probably a good thing.
Yeah. And the same thing even happens with like some of my closer friends and stuff like that. Like if I hang out with a person long enough, their thoughts get clearer and clearer. And so I to the point where I had one friend who she was going through a really tough situation and didn't want to talk about all of it. And I sat across from her, and I could like hear it in her head. And but been spending a lot of time with her, and so I just said back to her, I said, "Is this what's going on?" And this is before I was a practicing psychic. I was still just writing screenplays and thinking I was going to be a screenwriter. I wasn't
Right.
on this whole other path. And I repeated back to her everything that was going on, and she just burst out crying. It was like, how did you know? And I was like, I don't know. I just heard it. But it can be helpful, especially if someone is going through something that they're afraid to talk about. I can pull it out of them and then help, and then that's why it's good for readings. I think that's why I ended up being a reader, because not everybody wants to have that experience. So you can't just always do it to your friends. But if someone is
No.
booking you, if someone is actually booking you to do that, then they want you to pull it out, and then it works.
Has there ever been someone that you were close to that got really ticked that you could tell?
Oh, absolutely. I've lost friends, full blown lost friends,
Oh
uh,
man.
all the way back to high school. I remember I was after high school. I had a premonition about an old high school friend. I called her mom's house because I didn't know if she still lived there or if she was elsewhere. I called her mom's house and I left a voicemail for her, just saying, basically I was like, please disregard if this is not true at all whatsoever. But I had this crazy dream and I have to share it. And I just want you to be safe and okay. And so I shared the dream and just said, again, if you don't, you don't have to believe it or whatever. But
Right.
I felt if I hadn't shared it, I was doing a disservice, because it felt like a warning.
Yeah.
And never heard from her again. Unfriended on Facebook, blocked. Yeah, completely shut out from that person's life. So I don't really,
I'm sorry.
yeah, it's okay. And it's happened a couple other times too, because sometimes I just can't help myself. Like I used to have some of my friends used to say I'm a truth sayer, and I can't help but I'm
Yes.
compelled to just say it. And even if it's not in my best interest.
Well, can you not? I mean, because you're really jam up at this stuff, right? I have a problem where if somebody feels me, and because I have people ask me all the time, you know, can you give me a reading?
Right.
I don't do readings. I'm not I'm not billing out here and saying that this is what I do.
Yeah.
And it's really terrible because if I'll be just tootling along, right? Doo-doo-doo, and somebody will say that, and it's like I get nervous ticks or whatever. And if I don't do it, then my day's shot,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yep. Yeah.
And I'm like, why would you ask me that? Why do you want me to do that? And 9 times out of 10, it's because, well, it's what you do, right? No, it is not what I do. Like. And I don't really, the first time it happened, I was just kind of like, I don't do that, you know. And it wasn't even somebody who knew me well.
Right.
So I sat there and I was just like, well, I can't just go home. I can't just walk away from here. What is wrong with me? And I looked at them and said, why would you ask me for a reading? Why
Yeah.
did you ask me for a reading? And she said, well, because you're really strong and this is what you do and you have a message for me.
Wow.
And I'm like, no, I don't. I mean,
Or
I
maybe
don't
you
even know
do.
how to.
Maybe you do, but you
Yeah,
don't have to.
I did. I mean, I did.
Yeah.
And, it was just the most bizarre thing. And it wasn't a polite message.
Oh no.
And, but she knew exactly what it was. And I was just like, I didn't want to say what it was, right?
Right.
Because it was rude. And so, but I could not walk out the door. It was at my doctor's office. I had gone in to get a allergy shot. And so I was walking out the door and I was just like, she's like, you're not going to tell me. I was like, this is terrible. It's not coming from me. This is not me. But, you're just going to have to suck it up, Sally. And she was like, what?
Oh no.
I was like, and she was like, oh my God, that's my grandpa. And I'm like,
Wow.
what? He was a truck driver.
Amazing.
And truck drivers named their trucks. His truck was Sally. And anytime that she would be having a tough time getting up their drive, I guess they did lumber stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
But you know that truck got him everywhere. So when one of the kids was whining, he would say, "You better suck it up like Sally." And so where I'm thinking this is the most horrible thing in the world, I cannot possibly say this to this woman. I don't know her,
Right.
right? And she's thrilled to freaking death that she had an obnoxious message, right? I'm just like, oh my God.
When people are asking for it, if they're asking for a message, I feel like they're a lot more open to possibly receiving something that could sound rude.
Well, but I mean, I had never had that happen to me before.
I
And
truly believe that some of us are called to this. I do think you're called to it. I do.
it's very weird. Uh, Randy wants to know if your Volkswagen that you were in with your mom and dad was white.
It was. Yeah. Yeah. It was white. I think it was white. It was either white or pale yellow, but it was but whitish,
Yeah.
like in the white family. I'd have to ask my mom to be sure.
Yeah. We had the green one.
Oh, did you?
My parents had a green one. We
This was
started with a Rambler and then we moved up to a Volkswagen or down to a Volkswagen.
Yeah, this was a long
But
time ago. I was like knee
yeah,
high to a grasshopper.
yeah, it was ours too. But it's so interesting because you have these little connectivity things like that. And like I said, I just met him this evening.
Right.
So, and
Wow.
Facebook friend. But I'm really having so much fun with you. So
Okay.
is that how did you start sharing messages? How did you start being comfortable with doing that?
That's a good question. There were a couple of instances that occurred that forced me to do it. For most of my life, I didn't like sharing I didn't want to do it. But the moment that I was really forced to and it was actually really uncomfortable, but then it made me comfortable, if that makes any kind of sense.
Mhm.
My stepmom had passed away. She had pancreatic cancer, and once from
Oh,
diagnosis, it was, it was fast. My dad went through hell, absolute hell, you know, uh, and right after she had passed, I'm in Los Angeles. He lives in Florida, in Flagler County. So, we're from Massachusetts, regardless. Uh, I, for about a week leading up to before her passing, and then about a week after, she was coming to me. And it was almost like she had passed before she passed in a weird way, because the way she
mhm.
came through as a spirit before she even passed. It was the weirdest thing. I've since had that happen with other people who are terminally ill. So something's going on there. I don't know what exactly. Also, people in comas can talk to me like a spirit, which is also strange. But that's only happened like once with a coma. But with her, she came through, and then after she passed, she kept coming through, and I could not understand her. I knew it was her. It was her voice. She was yapping my ear off every night when I would go to sleep. Bah, 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 I was going on and on and on, but I could not comprehend exactly what she was saying. And finally, I have to go see my dad, and I have to tell my dad what's going on. And he might be mad or upset or something, but I have to tell him, even if it's going to be traumatic. So I told him I was coming back to visit him and spend time with him and help him, cope. And I get off the plane. I go to greet him. The second he sees me, he starts bawling his eyes out. This man is not a crier. He is an ex-Marine. I've never seen my dad cry. And he's bawling his eyes out, and I just say, "It's okay, Dad. I'm here. Let's get out of the airport," because I know he's embarrassed. Let's get into the car. I'm not embarrassed, but
Right.
he is. So we get into the car, and I say to him, "I have to tell you something, and it's really weird, and I'm very uncomfortable telling you." And he's like, "What? Just tell me." And I said, "I think Carolyn is trying to talk to me from the other side." And he was like, And I thought he was going to maybe get mad or something. And he was like, well, just tell me what is it? What's the message? And let me just tell you, Kat, when I left, I was, for a hot second, my personality, my consciousness took a back seat. Carolyn popped into my body, yapped away at my dad. I don't even know for how long. I have no idea what she said to him. The next thing I know, I feel like I'm waking up from a nap. I'm a little groggy.
Really?
And I can tell that I'm talking, and I'm like, what am I saying? I'm talking. Why am I talking? What did I don't know. I'm like, Dad, I just feel like I just woke up and I don't know what I just said. And he's like, doesn't matter it was for me. It wasn't for you. It was messages from her to me. So, I got what I needed. He basically was like, I got what I needed to hear, you know? I mean, he was still upset, obviously, but he needed some kind of a closure, and he got it. Then he tells me this story that blows my mind.
Really?
He says, when your grandfather, his father, so Grandpa St. Hilaire, when he died, my grandmother, so Grandpa St. Hilaire was a French Canadian and my grandma is Italian. And, Italians really know how to do a funeral. You know what I'm saying? Like
I
they,
do.
so she is wailing and crying, and she's going through every grief, and we're doing everything we can to hold on to her and just keep her here and calm her down. She's practically throwing herself into the ground after him.
Yeah.
So my dad just kind of said that he kind of just thought in his head, not even on, it just popped in, Dad, is there anything that you can tell me if there is an afterlife, if you're out there, if you can hear my thoughts, is there anything that you can tell me to tell her to calm her down as proof, And he suddenly said that he felt compelled to tell her something. He walked up to her. He whispered it into her ear. She listened. She stopped crying. She took a deep breath, got up, went into the kitchen and started making food. And if you know an Italian grandma, you know they're okay if they're in the kitchen making food. I mean, not to stereotype, but
well, that's still true.
At least maybe not every Italian grandma, but my Italian grandma, if she's cooking food in the kitchen, she's okay. So he's like, so he said though, that when he did that, it wasn't him doing it. He was compelled to do it. And he had no memory afterwards of what he said to her. No memory at all. He was taken over and shared it. So when he told me that, I was like, oh, so I inherited this. So I'm not crazy, or we both are. And at least it's in the family.
You're crazy together, right?
Crazy together. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my God. And something about that experience, even though I had experiences previous to that,
Right.
that experience validated all the previous experiences. Because the stuff that
it mattered.
Right. And the stuff that I shared to my dad that his wife had said was nothing I could have known. The stuff that my dad shared to his mother was nothing that he could have known. And yet we both have these experiences. Now, he's never really been able to control it, I don't think, but he never took the deep dive to study it like I have. Like I've spent decades training myself and taking classes and other people training me. But that was really the first time that I was like, okay, I can talk to the dead and I can share messages. And I can bring them here. It took a lot more work to be able to turn it on and off when I want it to, a lot of for several more times after that, it was like bumbling in the dark. There would be times I couldn't connect, and then other times I'd connect too much.
Well, can you stop them when you're ready to stop them?
Absolutely. Yes. I didn't used to be able to, but now I can. Yeah.
Yeah, because I just found that very intrusive.
It's very intrusive. I find trying to fall asleep at night when they show up and they bug you when you're trying to sleep is the worst,
to tell you something about that.
Yes.
My mother passed away not too long ago, and she had Alzheimer's, and I took her to lunch one day. The listeners have heard this, but it's so funny that you just said that because my mom and I were there took her to the barbecue place. We're sitting there eating, and she was like, "Well, tell me what the name of your show is." I do another show called Paranormal Experienced, right? And I was like, "Well, Fate Magazine Radio and Paranormal Experience." So she's like, "Paranormal." She said, "Don't you hate it when they line up along the side of your bed and they just won't shut up?" And I'm
What?
like, "What?" And she's like, and they used to do that all the time. And I would just tell them, "I'm little. I need to go to sleep. You need to go talk to my mom." And I'm like, "Well, dang. Okay." So there you go. You know, not just me, not just
No.
my mom, to my grandma, who probably to her mom, and it's funny because on Facebook, I got a message from a woman who said, "I'm your fourth cousin on this side. And we have a lot of the same skills. We're a
Hmm.
lot alike." And I was just like, "Really?
Interesting.
Okay." So, yeah. And how she found me, I don't know.
Right.
But it was so interesting because apparently that side of my family has a lot of this stuff. And it was weird.
You have it.
But it was,
You're a medium for sure. You're definitely a psychic medium. I knew the first time I met you. I mean, it was, I don't remember what the scenario. I don't remember how I first met you, but I remember thinking, "Oh, you're a medium."
yeah.
I think you shared a
Well,
story where I was like, "Oh, spirits are talking to her for sure."
well, it's just so weird, because I didn't particularly like that idea
Right. It's a weird
when,
idea.
yeah, and I feel like they should be talking to their people because some of this stuff is personal,
Very,
you know,
very personal. I mean, my readings
and
get so personal with people. I know stuff about my clients that I don't think anybody in their life knows. And those things that I know will go with me to the grave unless they want me to share. Like I have some clients who are like, "Oh no, please tell this story because it's so crazy or cool or wild or whatever."
yeah,
But for most of them, and to be honest, I don't even sometimes I don't even remember stuff from me readings. Like I'll do a reading
yeah,
for a person and I'll give all this information and then I leave the reading and it's like an entity has gone into my brain and scooped it out
yeah,
because
just done a wipe.
boop, it's not meant for me. And
Yeah.
and I'm okay with that because I mean, yeah, I am a little nosy, but if it's not meant for me, I don't need it.
Yeah. Well, and that's funny to me because it's, while we may be interested, it isn't ours.
Right.
But, I mean, you could have knocked me over with a feather when my mom said that because I really thought that the stuff that I did was just a, um, fluke kind of a
Right.
thing, right? And I mean, it was trippy. It was very trippy.
It is trippy, and it is nerve-wracking when they line up along the side of your bed, to be honest. It really is. It's totally nerve-wracking. I mean, one of my first nightmares, well, it wasn't a nightmare, but my mom called it a nightmare. One of my first like terrors as a child was lying in bed and seeing faces,
Yeah.
surrounding me and looking down at me and like poking me. And I would tell my mom and she'd be, "Oh, it's just a bad dream." And it was like,
Yeah.
"No, it wasn't a dream." But okay,
Well,
it was a dream.
yeah. Well, I mean, because at that point, what is she going to say?
Right.
I
What can
mean,
what could she say?
yeah, because I, and I didn't realize this until I didn't realize what it was until I got older and was doing stuff. But good night, Mary. But when I was little, yeah, I can't sleep if there's a light on.
Right.
And my grandma was like a nighttime reader, and I'm a nighttime reader.
Mhm.
But so she would be like, just close your eyes. I was like, no, it hurts this right here. It hurts my eyes.
Yep.
And she was like, that's not your eye. I was like, it is. That's what it makes that hurt. And it makes my head hurt.
Yep.
And she was like, okay, we're going to have a talk. you know? But she still didn't tell me but my pineal was so open that
You were getting light
I
bleed.
didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get them all the time. I close my eyes and I get light bleeds from here all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm the same way. I have to be in a pitch dark room or I can't sleep.
Yeah. But it was so funny because I had I just remembered that. But I always laugh and say that my grandma was New Age before there was New Age. Right?
Yes.
And
yes.
it's so much fun. But it's really cool. And you are so much fun because do you do your classes online? I mean, you said Zoom.
Yes, I do. I have most of my classes are online. So the intro to pet communication or animal communication, sometimes I just interswap those words. That one is going to be entirely online on Zoom through the Green Man store July 30th. And I don't think that they have posted it to the website yet, but it should be posted very soon. And I think it's like $33 to sign up for that. So that'll be coming up. That'll be a 2-hour class, 7:30 p.m. it'll start. So it goes till 9:30 p.m. our time. So it's late on the East Coast, but I am planning to record it. So if anybody if you sign up and you miss it because it's late, I will have a recording.
Cool beans.
And then the next class I'm teaching, I know we're wrapping up soon, but I got to share my next.
Oh, you've got time.
Because so the intro to pet communication, I created that class years ago. So I don't really have to do much work on that. That's ready to go. But I'm finally, this is the first time in a long time, I'm creating a brand new class. And it's it's necromancy for beginners. And I'm kind of excited to teach it because a lot of people have a negative connotation about necromancy. And one of the things that I like to do, and I do this with my my web series, Secrets of the Craft as well. I like to destigmatize this stuff and show how it's just completely normal and fine. So like my web series shows witches and witchcraft and real life, and that, we're not crazy baby eating monsters or anything like that. We're just like herbalists and whatnot. So I'm going to do the same thing with necromancy, where I think a lot of people have this negative connotation of necromancy as being like evil and dark and wrong. And there was a time in our history when it was considered that because it was sort of tainted by various things. But at the end of the day, it's just divination through the dead. That's all it is. It's, it's getting guidance and answers from spirits. And that's basically what a mediumship reading is. Sometimes a mediumship
it is.
Right? Sometimes a mediumship reading is just, I want to make sure my mom is okay on the other side, or I need closure. And that's not really divination. That's different. But many times people want to talk to their deceased loved ones and family members for advice and for help and for guidance. And so that's the bulk of what I do, where it's like, yeah, I can talk to the dead, but really I'm just helping a person figure out what to do, because the person that they used to always go to isn't here anymore on this plane.
Right.
And that's necromancy. That's, getting divining information from spirit. So I'm going to teach a little beginner class on that to kind of destigmatize it, show people what it really is, talk about Hollywood version of it, talk about the history of it. And then we're going to do little practice sessions and actually practice necromancy in the class so people can see like that it's completely normal. So that'll be either I'm hoping for August if I can finish the class in time, because it's a lot of work, a lot of research. Yeah. Stacks and stacks of books. Like the one book that I'm reading right now that I'm doing research from is massive. It's like,
Oh, that is. What is it?
So this is elucidation. I can't read, of necromancy, and it's a newer translation of an older book.
Sure.
But it's, I have all these books like piled up that I'm reading, and it's super fascinating. Anyway, I'm going to take that and distill it into something very simple for people to understand. And then after that is my big series. So I'm bringing back Mediumship for Witches 2, which is like, I think this is going to be an 8-class series. So I had
Oh, wow.
just taught Mediumship for Witches 1 earlier, a couple months ago. So this is the second part of that class. And this is where we would like really take a deep dive, and it's conjuring through the clairs. So we go through all the different ways that we receive information individually and do exercises and guided meditations and stuff like that to sort of focus and open up everybody's abilities as much as they possibly can be opened up. And that'll be fun.
That sounds fun. A lot of people are afraid. I'm kind of nervous about opening as much as I could. It would be nice to do that with somebody like you that can help you not fear your own abilities.
Exactly. Yeah, because
So,
you want to keep you, because you don't want to open it beyond what's like, each person kind of has a limit, and it's different for
yeah,
different people. So I try to only open people as much as the individual is capable of being opened, where they're still safe, if that makes sense.
right.
But yeah, so I'm, I'm excited to teach those. And then I'm trying to think if I have other things. I think I have other things coming up, but I can't talk about those yet.
Okay. Well, I will be looking for them because, it's really fun to be able to talk with you about this stuff. And I apologize for the getting shut off there for a minute, but
No,
they did not know. They did not know that they were hitting the router. So, but
oh,
I'd really rather my house not burn down. So I was really okay with that. But it was just an opportune moment.
right,
But
right.
Carl is so fantastic. I knew that you were in good hands until I could get back.
We were
So,
fine.
well, tell people your website.
Yes, so you can find me at www.americanwitch13.com. So American Witch 13. And you can also find me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, all the things at American Witch 13. I'm probably most active on Instagram, though, out of all of them, to be honest, just because it's easy to use. But
I've just recently discovered Instagram, so it's
yeah, it's
fun.
awesome. I think I just followed you. Um, so yeah, I post a lot of memes on there and spells and, tips about witchcraft or mediumship or whatever. I don't post a lot of alien stuff there, though. I haven't quite figured out where to put that stuff. But all the other stuff is there. And and my whole thing is, I truly believe that we are all psychic and mediums. I really do. I truly believe that we all have the capacity to communicate with aliens and spirits and all of these things. And that it's just, it's kind of like art or math or sports. Like, we can all do the thing. Some of us are a little better than others, and that's okay. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. But we can all train to be better, just like
Yes.
with art or math or sports. You can train. And so that's like, I feel like that's my whole purpose for existing, is to sort of help other people do what I do, because I find it very, just for me personally, very comforting and very rewarding. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it makes me feel like I'm not alone. And
I don't think you're ever alone.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny?
Well,
I know we have like 2 seconds left. My laptop, the charger just stopped working, and my laptop is about to die. So perfect.
they're just getting you off of here, girl.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your time and your sharing. And I just really am so glad we got to have this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much, Kat.
So,
It's a pleasure.
yes. But, and I will see you online at least, and
Yes.
just enjoy.
If you go to Conscious Life Expo in February next year, 2026, I think I'm getting a table there. It's my first time ever. doing something like that here. So I'm a little
You're
nervous.
gonna have
So
so much fun.
yeah, so anybody listening, if you go to Conscious Life Expo, please find me. I'm looking right now at table M33. I'll see if I get it.
I hope you do.
Yeah, so if anybody's listening, if you're going to be there, please come and say hello.
They will. I know they will.
Awesome.
And on that token, everyone listening, thank you so much for being here. We had a little bit of excitement there at the beginning, but we're all good. So thank you again, and we will see you next time. Same cat time, same cat channel. Good night. Thanks, Melissa.
Bye. Good night. Thank you.